Okay, so it's been a while since we've been working on the Tornado, purely because we've been waiting paint and everything to come in. A couple of things we're going to do totally different for a first time on this particular kit. First up is we're going to actually not going to pre-shade and do our usual way of weathering. We're going to post-shade it. And by post-shading, we're going to be doing everything literally in reverse. So normally you would come along, primer goes down, okay, which is what this one had. And then literally we've just been coming along with the paint, okay, putting in our lines, dark lines in black or something else like that, then the paint over the top so they show through, and it gives you an idea of where and where not weathering would be. Pretty straightforward, okay? But because you're doing camo, the trouble is it gets lost. So this particular one is going to be in full wraparound 1970s, 80s camo scheme. So that's the grey and the green, okay, right the way over. Now the trouble with that is you do so many little touch-ins, repairs, moving it, getting it all right and everything else like that, that you actually lose that pre-shading, okay? So sometimes you, by the end of the time you've done the model, especially if you do our techniques of where we sort of do post-bleaching and fading of the paintwork and things like that, when it comes down to it and all said and done, you've lost it all. So there's no point putting it in the first place. So what we're going to do is show you the other way, which is to post-shade it, okay? Now a lot of this is done is basically by the simple techniques of the actual fading system that we do and everything else. But to start with, we need to get the colour down. Now, in all honesty, this is looking a lot darker than it was before, and that's purely because we've already set about putting on this colour. So I've done the entire underside and some of the top, but I've still got a little bit of work to do as I show you, but that's why it's a slightly different grey. We've also done all of the little bits and pieces. So down here, the fuel tanks, the stabilisers are done, the weapons fit, pylons, and so forth and so on. We've also done the flap system. They've already been pre-painted in this grey. So we've still got to finish off. Now, just a little bit here in case you're wondering. Two types of paint. No, it's not. It's the same paint. It's just that this one here is a European or an export version. This one here is the mainland Japan home one. Okay. The reason I got both, I was waiting for the paint. This was the paint we was waiting for. So if you are wondering why it's got a different top and everything else like that, the homegrown stuff, as I call it, the stuff that is, you know, just in Japanese. There's no English writing on this whatsoever. They tend to have these tops on. Now, if you ever wondered what this little slit for on the bottom of your tool is for, it's because it fits in just like this, and then you can literally undo it, okay? Although these are quite handy because you've got them on there, you can grip. That is what that centre bit is the tool, is because it fits that perfectly, okay? Whereas the other ends fit, either this end fits the actual Hasegawa bottles perfectly, okay? And you will notice the other end fits Tamiya. Okay, and that's the reason for these tools. So if you haven't got one of these guys, it's in conjunction with this little guy. It's a little rubber pot, so it holds onto your paint. You can put the top on like that. Okay, you can get a really good hold of it and a good grip for getting those tops off. So if you've ever had trouble with sticking paint, get some of these. It's made by Guns, actually it's their home stuff. So it is the Mr. Hobby GSI Cresto 2, 1 and 2 system, okay, which 3 is the bottom. Quite a handy little tool to have. So what we're going to do, we're going to set about painting this one. So we're going to do it in our normal way using slightly different thinners though. So because this paint, I find it is really, really nice to work with. I don't think we've used the Guns paints for a while. It's more like an enamel paint, okay? The big thing you have to remember about it is drying times. So if you allow it basically the same amount of time as you would with enamel, you're not going to go wrong, okay? So don't think this paint is going to be that quick thing, a bit like using Model Air or Tamiya where you can spray it on and then 30 seconds later you can hold on to it and do the other area. Hence, whilst I've done the bottom half, and to be honest, the front half's painted, so I can do the top and the back whilst holding it with you guys. The other thing you can do with this stuff, which you could do with all paints, but this is particularly good with it, is to use an enamel thinners, okay, or a cellulose thinners. You know, basically it's a lacquer, okay. This one here is Mr. Colors self-leveling thinners. It's technically a lacquer thinner, means it's very hot, but it does do a fantastic job and you get an extremely smooth finish. If you're ever doing glosses, something else like that, this is stuff you want to go with. So we're mixing acrylics with lacquers, which technically you don't normally do, or certainly I don't really show very often. It's very smelly, it's a bit messy and everything else. I prefer to use acrylics, but for the purpose of this demonstration, that's what we're going to use. Okay, so we will need our little cleaning brush. We're going to need a pot to put in. That's to put in. Okay, so this has had a good old mix up already, although I'm going to give it another one. Okay, so this stuff you just treat as you would Tamiya. If you've never used it before, you'll just notice it's a little bit more smelly than perhaps Tamiya paints, but certainly brush painting is a little bit better, if I must say so, than Tamiya paints. The colour range is a little bit better, okay? And you'll notice I will praise this stuff all the time. So you're asking yourself that big question, as we all would, well, why don't you just use that then, okay? Because let's face it, they do all the colours you could ever need, literally. I don't think of a colour they don't do. Simple answer is getting them in the UK is very hard. Tamiya, readily available, get it anywhere. Hobbyco, you know, your local hobby stores, everything else, no problem at all. To be honest, Vallejo Model Air, again, it's readily available absolutely everywhere. Guns, hen's teeth. It's really hard to find this stuff. When it's around, grab it. That's all I can simply say. I don't know of a readily available importer for this stuff in the UK currently. We do have MDC, they do import it into the UK. People like Models R go stock it in the UK, things like that. But I know the rest of the world you're quite lucky, you can get this stuff everywhere, but from a UK point of view we don't, hence whilst I get mine all imported, which costs a small fortune, but it's the price you pay. But that's the reason I don't use it all the time. So, okay, treat it as you would any other paint. The only trouble with these ones here on these lids, they fall over, then the goo that's in here runs to the side and runs down, so that is a problem with that. So that's why I like to use this guy, and I stand the top in it like so, okay? And because it's in there like that, it doesn't run off everywhere. And I don't know if that's what it's supposed to do, but certainly that's what I do with it. So, our paint. So for this purpose, we're just going to go thinners in first. So it's going to be a standard type of just less than 50-50 mix, because it's quite a thick mix on here. I've overdone it in here purely because I need to line and coat the actual airbrush itself, because it's usually having acrylics and water-based things in here. If you didn't do that, sometimes you can get a bit of lumpy gel, things like that. But if you put a little bit of thinners in here first, okay, we'll go over to our cleaning vessel, and we're just going to blow out a little bit down in here. And what that's doing is coating the needle, the nozzle and everything else. So when it does come through properly for the first time, we should be left with a really nice setting, okay? So that's in, then we're just gonna do, as I say, a little bit less than a 50-50 mix. So it's probably around about 60% thinners to paint. Into your color cup, just a good old mix. You'll notice it will work really, really well. The other pro for this stuff is, because it doesn't dry quite as quick as the other manufacturers, if you're in a hot country, this stuff won't go as spitty, dry on the needle as readily as perhaps other manufacturers do and things like that. Okay, so what we could do with is another quick sheet. So we're just going to stick him in just like that for a moment. Just need a little area here just to test this. Put that down. So we just check our flow. No problem at all with that, really happy. So all we're going to do is literally overpaint the entire model, okay? So treat it as you would anybody else's. You might see some little lines on here, it's something I'll explain a little bit later, but I'm going to go over them for now, okay? And we're just going to come in the top. And down here. Also, you will find with the self-leveling thinners, one little nice thing about it. It's smoky in here already. Let me just kick some of these on. Okay. I'll just put one of them on for a minute. Just clear some of that from the place. The thing you'll notice with it, it dries very, very quickly. You can put on quite a wet coat like we did there. Within a few moments, it looks dry. Don't let that deceive you. If you put your hands in it, it's going to be very, very soft, and that's when you're going to get fingerprints, thumbprints, and everything else in there. Okay, so just be advised. The other thing as well, it's got a very nice capability of coming back, as I call it, so you can flood an area quite wet with this stuff, and then literally it will look like all the riveting detail and obviously panel line detail might disappear. It will come back, okay, so don't worry too much about that. Okay, so we'll just dry that off. Okay, we've gone through that pretty quick, so I'm just drying off with the airbrush. Okay, I'm just going to knock up another small amount. low. As I say, I've got this coming out quite heavy. Remember all your angles, but really there's no right and wrong with this. You're just putting down a coat, okay? Okay, so we'll stop there. We're just going to cut to air, dry this down. Making sure we're dry on the bottom. There's one little area we just need to do here. Spring-loaded clamps, just hold it on an arm. Do this guy as well. Okay. Now we've still got a small amount left in the colour cup, and that's what we want. Okay. So we're just going to put our lid on this for the moment. Get that done up. Okay, so what we're going to do is just going to let that dry just for literally 10 minutes, come back, have a look at it, and then we're going to start to fade in and start the painting and weathering process all in one. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes, cleared the fumes, we can have a look now. Hopefully you can see, certainly on the overheads there, it's a nice smooth satin finish, and when we say a satin finish we just don't mean, you know, sort of semi-gloss. It's all the same, literally. It's what that thinner does, where you wouldn't get that particular finish perhaps if we'd used a traditional one. So if we'd used our normal one, so say we're using our Vallejo airbrush cleaner or something like our X20A, we're not going to get quite that nice beautiful finish to it. So, you know, that is the thing. If you're in a situation perhaps where, you know, you don't mind the smell, you've got an extractor running all the time, a respirator on, something else like that, then perhaps, you know, that could be a thinner to do, especially if you suffer from rough texture. Now, this isn't the be all and end all, and everyone rush out and buy this thinner and all the rest of it, because there is a lot of drawbacks to it, okay? And as I said, the biggest one is the drying times, things like that. Being a self-leveling thinner, by its nature, what this means is it's slowing down the drying process so it levels out before it actually dries. That said, this is now dry. It doesn't mean though you can grab hold of it forevermore, because you will leave fingerprints in it. It's dry on the surface, it's dry to hold, to maneuver and everything else like that, but I certainly wouldn't hold it for any length of time like this in my hand, for instance, because what's going to happen is you're going to come away and you're going to have a fingerprint there and it will be hell on earth to get it removed, okay? So just remember that. It's, as I say, it's very easy to sort of be drawn along with these things, but you know, things like that can work against you as well as with you. So next up, what we need to do is bleach out all of this work, because you might notice it's a lovely colour, it's a lovely finish, but it's just a little bit dark. That's because it needs lightening up. Now certainly don't panic about colours too much until we get the green on. We spoke about this on the previous build with the Hind, how you change that complete sand colour when the green went on. With the grey it's exactly the same as well. It will get slightly lighter, but certainly from our point of view we do want to lighten it up just a little bit. Because we're dealing with a grey, the quickest way to do it is with a white. If you're trying to lighten any other colour, I would always lighten with grey. But from our point of view, we're just going to grab a few drops. Hopefully we've got a little bit in here. And that's the other thing, don't be too worried. It will do. It's not the best painting in the world. But literally what we've got left in the colour cup is that. So there's not much in here. So usual thing, what we will do is, right down with our thinners. It's a big pot, can't see it. We're just gonna, a 50-50 on top of what we had, okay? So does that make sense? So whatever you had down there that was a 50-50 mix, add 50% thinners to, okay? Then we give it a mix, all right? And then you can do the quick test. Have a look at your brush, and what you're looking for is, like, you might be able to see it on the brush here, but it looks like watery, dirty thinners, if anything else, okay, rather than a paint. This is because we want it to blend and bleach rather than cover. Okay, so it's not bad. That'll work, I think. Then we're going to grab some of our paint here. So this is, I've hardly got any left in the bottom, so I'm giving this a mix with on there, because it's not going to matter if this goes horrible. Okay, we're picking up a bit of a mix, and we're just going to add 1 dollop of shade difference. Okay, so should change the colour quite a bit, and you might be able to see the colour cut to down there. It's quite different, okay, and that's just one brush full of thinned paint again. All right, so what we're going to do, if I do it here to show, hopefully you'll be in a situation. So if you look, see, you can always tell if it does that, that's a good sign. It means it's very, very thin and everything else. So we just clean up your thing. Okay, so when we put this down, we've got our initial colour. Okay, and now you can see the difference. So this is our initial colour up here, and this is our new colour down here, okay? So if I put it next to it, you can see how much colour difference we've got. It's very thin, it's going to be very nice. The only drawback is it is incredibly smelly. Okay, so I can smell this now. So, hopefully none of that's wet, that's all good. What we'll do, we'll flip over and start on the underside. Okay, so if we sort of come in here, in fact if we come in here, everyone's a winner with the ankles, because what we'll do, we're just going to jack him up on that side, and we'll jack him up on this side. Okay, so it doesn't have to be as accurate as perhaps you're thinking. It doesn't have to be inside every single panel line, okay? What you're trying to do though is just sort of fade it across the broad spectrum of all the work we've done, all right? So I'm not exactly happy with the lighting there, so we're just going to move this around slightly here. All right, so that's a little bit better. So what we're trying to do is literally, we'll start in the middle so you can see what we're doing, all right? We're just going all there, pushing back and fading in. And we're not stopping anywhere, okay? So we're just going to continue in, and we're just doing all those centres as we walk our way down, all right? Then we're coming back in, and again, we're rubbing them back, perhaps go back over them. So what we're doing is not lingering on a panel line. We want it all to be elsewhere, okay? And we're going back over the middle, now we're going to drop down to some other areas. Bottoms of this wing. Between these flat sections. Now we're just going to do some little up and down ones on the side. This is purely to introduce a little bit of randomness and texture. The other thing you'll notice is because this has got a flat paint now in with the gun stuff is a gloss, okay? It will give you a tonal change to your paintwork, to the texture and everything else like that, okay? So that's those in, so we're just going to come in. I know this is on the offside to me, but this should be all okay. Okay. I'm just going to whip it around this side, hold the tail a bit. Just do these sides. And to be honest, we're using quite a bit of paint. We're not exactly slowing down here. And again, a little bit more of this up and down business. This is just to encourage sort of streaky look, okay, as we sort of come in, alright? So we're just going to go down here as well. Centres of panels. Alright, then right the way over it just like that. Now comes in what I call filtering, call it what you like, but I call it filtering, okay? So what that is a high distance, just blast right over everything. And the idea with this is literally what will happen is where you've put this, the lighter colour around right the way through, it makes it a little bit flatter in texture, which causes quite a contrast in colours as well as shade. By giving it a filter over the top like that, it brings it all down to the same look. So when you look across it, it should look roughly the same, and then you look from a high on it, then you've got the difference in colour and everything else. So this is pass one. So you should be able to see, this is where I need some type of split screen or something. Okay, this is pass one just like this. Sorry, I'm sticking myself to the bench. All right, okay, and this was the original colour. So you've got original colour, new colour, and you can see a little bit of mottling, a little bit of changing in the colour there, nothing massive. But what that does sort of, remember, you know, last time you used pre-shading, a sort of hint of that perhaps, and that's what we're trying to sort of recreate instead of doing the pre-shading. So we're causing the panel lines to be darker by their nature because we haven't gone near them. That's going to have the original colour. Okay, so what you would normally do now is lighten up and go again, but we've got to do the top, so we're going to do exactly the same to the top of the model as well. So if we just poke him down here, it's quite a nice spot. Check your flow, check your needle, everything else when you're happy. We're just going to go on. And the things with the Tornado, there's quite a lot going on up here. There's various panels to look at. And my one recommendation would be, especially when you've got a nice big sort of centre lump like this on anything, it may be an engine lump, it may be something else, just do lots of vertical stripes, because weathering by its nature, water will run off with it and it will just help that a little bit later on. Okay, so that's that side done. We're just going to come around here, exactly the same. So centre the panels. And remember to do your bars as well over the canopy. All too often they're left and nobody takes any notice, and it's thick, bright paint. Okay, so if you give them a little bit of work as well. So just over these guys. Whoops. Now there's a case, very heavy just there, don't panic, just knock it back, just air now from a distance. We're going to dry it down and it should fade in, okay? So don't panic too much, we've got lots of colours going over, but if you go over the top and you get a spill like that, as I say, don't worry about it. And then what we're going to do is just do that blend over the top, and that will take that back in. Happy with all of that, so we should be able to grab it from underneath now. I'm going to put my fingers in the wheel wells, to be honest, so we can hold it, so we can do this tail. Okay, so hopefully you can see it there with the difference in the tones. You can put those in. Okay, then if we just blend over the top just to fade it down a little bit. As you see, they all sort of blend in now. We try and back. You haven't got, they're there by the same sheen, if you like, without being the difference between sort of glossy and not. Okay, a little bit more here. The other thing you might notice, my air pressure is extremely high because I'm blending. Okay, if I want to detail work, we'll be turning it down, but I don't because we're blending. And high air pressure, what that actually causes is obviously it to get that nice fuzzy look and everything else, which most people hate, but we like because it will give us our nice look to everything. Okay, so there we go, that's it done in its sort of form like that. We've still got to do these guys as well. So we've got to do the actual bottoms of the flaps here. So we're just gonna, quite heavy ones on some of them and not. We want nice changes in the colour with those. So that's why we've done them quite heavy. These M1s might as well have a little spray. Although with those you might decide perhaps you want to make it look like it's had some maintenance and it's had a repaint or a touch up on one or a complete new panel, then obviously you can do that with ease. Okay, so that's those on just like that, and then we can pick out, and we've still got to do all these little areas, so certainly we've got these on these tail planes. But just remember to blend over the top of everything for a minute, and then you can come back and take care of them properly afterwards. But But as you look at that original colour we got in here, which is a really great light grey, it's almost sort of reminiscent of Tamiya XF19 or a light sort of ghost grey compared to what we've got. It doesn't cover it, and that's the thing. Don't think you're in here covering it up, you know, and changing colour. It should be a shade or a very light change rather than anything else, okay? Just going to do the fuel tanks. The pylons I think we'll do as a separate. So we're just going to do a couple of little areas, and we're going to do very much cross movements with these guys, just to make it look like it's got water tracking and things like that, rather than picking out specific areas in a camo pattern or anything else. We're running right out of paint, just about there, so I just about did it. Okay. So next thing you know, we're going to come back and do exactly the same, but we're going to lighten it one shade again, okay? So we're just going to come in, we're just going to put in a mix. We'll take the original colour, of which we don't have much left now. Good job I've got 2 bottles of this. Because we're getting quite short, I'm going to tip one into the other, give this a swill, and just clean off our guard here. Okay, might as well get the last bits out of this. Okay, and then what we're going to do, last time, as you know, we did 1 brush full. This time we're going to do 2, so we're just coming in with 1. 2. So we've got 2 brush fulls, and to be honest, I'm going to go with 1 more. That's it. So what we're doing really at the end of the day is, if you're up to date with the builds we're doing, when we did the Hind, we did probably 6 colour changes to go right the way through. Okay, we're basically doing that again, but because we're not limited to the pre-shading and worried about the pre-shading and everything else, with this particular one we just carry on indefinitely spraying this down. And don't forget, we can come back at any point with the original colour to do touch-ins, to do some panel line work and everything else, which is something we will be doing a little bit later on when we get to those stages. So I know we've covered this in a little bit, so we're just going to check our flow without doing that. Don't tip it over your front of your airbrush and make a huge splash. So you can check it up against your original colours you've got to see how much lighter you are. And now, to be honest, we're a totally different type of grey to what we've had, which is fair enough. Alright, so we'll start on the bottom, and we're just going to work in reverse to what we had last time. But this time, to be honest, we're going to be a little bit more accurate to how we were, okay? So we're just going to picking out areas, and perhaps not absolutely everywhere with this, okay? We're still going to do a lot of this jaggy stuff up and down the sides. Hopefully you can see we're starting to break it up now and give us that sort of lighter look. Now obviously we're going to do exactly the same with the green as we work our way over it, so whilst that's just drying, and we're smashing it up now, throwing it all over, we're just going to do these others. Now the great thing about doing it this way is literally, if you don't like it, you can really easily go back a stage, okay, by literally coming in with a neat coloured paints, not thick 50-50 mix, but a thinner mix, okay, and just overcoat it and just to take it back a shade. And that is the great thing about it, okay. But the whole point with this one is to really sort of, you know, breaking it up, making it look that sort of bleached, weathered, worn, everything all in one. And again, it is that thing, don't worry about it, it's supposed to be, you know, that type of effect, if you like. It's supposed to be random, it's supposed to be all over the place, it's supposed to be unneat. You know, the thing is, you look at a real aircraft, they're pretty rough, you know, they look great from a distance, but you get up close to them, they're not the nicest things in the world. They're pretty rough, there's some nasty edges, you get bleed, you get, you know, oil staining, just corrosion marks, you get literally everything. Now we've got these darker ones, we're just going to do the pylons as well, just a little flicks here and there over them, because to be honest, by the time they get a wash, they're going to get darker, so this will just lighten them up a little bit. Okay, so we're doing these fuel tanks, same thing. That's those done. Alright, so again, if we do a before and after, we've got obviously done there, and then on the other side, you see muted on the close-up, a little bit better, okay, so that's it. So now it's dry, we can do exactly the same on the top. This area where we went wrong, as you can see, it's quite nicely faded now, we don't have to worry too much, okay. Okay, same thing, last passes, just blending in, we're running out, so we're probably good to go with the top versus the bottom. Okay, and that is our grey coat all done. So, there's a little bit of white speckling you might be able to see. Literally, we're going to let them dry and we'll give them a rub. We can get rid of those a little bit later on, obviously the airbrush technique, cleaner technique, various things. What that is where I didn't mix the paint correctly, tiny little bit of flex happened, it got to the bottom and then we got left with those bits. But hopefully you can see now we've broken it up and got it to be looking like pre-shading. That's what we're trying to do. The whole idea now is to give us a pre-shaded look without pre-shading. And don't forget, we can go back during post-shading and go in there and take care of it and start taking it out, going around with the original colours, perhaps using darker colours, darker shades. So we've got the green going on. Instead of lightening it, as we've been doing everywhere, we can darken it. There's no rules to how this is going to work, and that's the great thing about it. I know lots of people worry about doing camo patterns and especially weathering and that. Don't worry, if it goes wrong, go over it again. You know, go back to the original colour. You can easily go back every stage here. If you think you've gone too light, okay, just go back to a 50-50 mix, one brush full, re-thin, and just give it a complete coat right the way over, okay, and then you can go back later on with the original colour around all the panel lines. So really don't worry about it. I know a lot of people tend to worry about the finish, exactly how it is. Don't worry about anything until you get to the end. Don't worry also if you've got rough texture, we'll take care of all of that at the end. There's various tips and tricks and little techniques you can do to get rid of that. So what we're going to do, we're going to let this one dry for around about, see some of those are brushing off anyway, so that's handy. I'm going to let this one dry for a couple of hours really so it's handleable and I can actually get hold of it, and then we can start work on the green.